A few kilometers from the sea at Wilderness in the Western Cape lies the quiet village of 𝗀𝗏𝗏. The pace is slow, something welcomed by Daniel Janse van Rensburg and his wife. It's a stark contrast from the horrors he experienced in Equatorial Guinea, an oil-rich country in West Africa. More than 400 days, that's how long Daniel Janse van Rensburg languished in one of the world's most notorious prisons, Black Beach in Equatorial Guinea. Imprisonment was never on his mind when he traveled the African continent on business. Aviation was his speciality.
My father was a pilot, so I've always loved aeroplanes and so on. I've never really had an interest in flying myself.
In 2012, he began working on a contract with 𝗀𝗶𝗶𝗴𝗶, also known as Angab, whom he met many years earlier when he was the mayor of Malabo, the capital of Equatorial Guinea. Daniel said that since 1999, he'd been involved in various aviation projects with Angab.
Again, up until this incident, I was very good friends with him. You know, I know his family and know his children well, his wife.
This time around, Angab wanted to start his own airline. Daniel spent 2 years setting this up. But in late 2013, Angab unexpectedly cancelled the aviation contract with Daniel and demanded that he return the 50% he'd been paid in advance. Daniel refused, saying he wasn't liable for that amount and also because he was unable to do so.
You know, there's a lot of money was spent trying to get the right planes flying back and forth to South Africa, to Europe, even to the east.
So almost immediately, Angab started getting hostile.
Yes.
And his initial reaction was to pick up the phone and start speaking to his contact.
Yeah.
Angab called in the Rapid Intervention Police, who arrested Daniel. He was charged with theft and fraud and taken before a judge, who immediately threw out the case.
He called Angab's lawyer and told them that, you know, they're wasting his time. You know, they're abusing the law. They must stick to the contract. And that was it. He said, I can go.
And that was supposed to be the end of the matter.
Yeah.
But sadly, it didn't turn out that way.
No, that was when everything went bad, very, very dark.
Daniel knew he had to get out of the country fast. South African embassy officials who were aware of his situation accompanied him to Malabo Airport. He even made it through passport control, but the Rapid Intervention Police were lying in wait.
And as I was going just about on the stairs, Angab came rushing in and he went ballistic. And when the consul came, Angab grabbed him and he told him, you know, he mustn't interfere. You know, the consul himself, you know, stood back and I said, but you got to do something. You know, what they're doing is illegal. So he said he can't do anything.
He was, in effect, kidnapped and taken to Black Beach prison. It's notorious for the brutalization and neglect of prisoners. As he was led towards the prison gate, he was horrified by what confronted him.
Everybody runs to the gate looking and screaming and shouting and...
Even as he was being roughed up, his thoughts were on his family.
I was worried more about my family actually then, and I knew it's going to destroy Milani.
Ek was geskok geweest. Ek het amper flou geword van skok. Ek het net ek het so 'n kas wat walk-in kas en ek het net daar gaan inklim en ek het net vir die Here gevra wat gebeur.
Local journalist Fran Kirsten, who lives a few kilometers from the Janse van Rensburgs in 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀, covered the story and also provided support for the family.
Something just clicked within me, and I think it's the mother in all of the women, the nurturing, that I needed to look out for a girl who was on her own without her husband. She'd met him at school, so she'd never been without him.
At that stage, I didn't know if my dad would come back or if things would be okay. At that stage, I just knew that whatever I do, I have to stay strong for my mother.
There are incidents that Daniel still won't talk about, but he told us of the beatings he witnessed, the rotten food, the overcrowding, and how he almost died of malaria and typhoid as there was no medical care.
You know, there's so many diseases inside there and the dirt, and there is no way, you know, you can't wash yourself properly, you can't live hygienically.
But what disturbed him the most was that men, women and children were all imprisoned together.
How can you do something? How can you put a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid in here, you know, because, you know, they get abused, you know, and, you know,
Then after 3 months, Daniel was taken out of prison to appear before a new judge who tried to broker a deal between him and 𝗀𝗋𝗶𝘀. He was told that all he needed to do to secure his release was hand over R1 million. Back at home, the family was only able to raise 70,000 rand. He was slung back into prison, where he would spend a further 14 months. He kept sane by holding on to his faith, helping weaker prisoners, keeping fit, and smuggling letters to his family. Then, a ray of light. A Spanish prisoner whom Daniel had befriended was released and made good on a promise to try and help him. He sent an attorney to see Daniel, but unfortunately he came bearing bad news.
He said he couldn't find anything against me. There's no charges against me. There's no documentation of me being in jail.
The attorney said a 200,000 rand bribe to be paid to officials would be the only way to secure his freedom. He was given just 1 hour to achieve this. He managed to get a call through to his wife.
When I phoned her, I said, 𝗀𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗀, jy moet nie huil nie, moet nie emosioneel raak nie. Asseblief luister net, het jy geld, kan jy geld kry?
It was the first time Malani had heard his voice in 6 months.
Dit was net soos om net sy stem te hoor. Ek het gedink ek droom. Soos in wow. En toe het hy gesê nee, ek moet net hierdie geld in die hande kry en ons moet net glo en so, ek het die geld gelukkig bymekaar gekry.
Daniel walked out of Black Beach. 3 weeks later, and again accompanied by embassy officials, he entered Malabo Airport. To his horror, he saw 𝗀𝗋𝗶𝗴𝗍's henchmen circling.
And I was thinking, geez, God, no, please, not again. So I told the guy in Afrikaans, I said, listen, we're walking past the door. I'm going for the car.
He and the embassy officials sprinted to a staff car and sped towards the safety of the South African embassy.
And I immediately got a phone call from a friend of mine, and he said as well, he said, don't leave the embassy, they're going to kill you.
He contacted journalist Fran Kirsten back in South Africa, asking her to alert the media to his plight.
We just said, please, Fran, let the dogs go, just run. You just go crazy.
And I must say the media were amazing. The entire national media sprang in. Sky News was there, everybody.
As a result, the mood changed, and the Equatorial Guinea government gave free passage for Daniel to leave the country safely. After a brief stop in Addis Ababa and Johannesburg, he finally touched down at George Airport in September last year, to a rapturous welcome from his overjoyed family. Daniel was on home soil and safe at last.
He went through absolute hell in that jail, and he was not afforded any trial or any charge was ever put to him.
Advocate Chris Schoeman is outraged. He says the family had been promised that President Jacob Zuma would discuss Daniel's illegal imprisonment with the president of Equatorial Guinea when he visited that country in 2014.
After his return, the Department of Foreign Affairs in South Africa could not give any explanation of what had transpired at this so-called meeting.
In mid-February, Daniel launched proceedings in the Western Cape High Court against 𝗀𝗋𝗋𝗋𝗋, the son of the president of Equatorial Guinea, who's currently the second vice president. Daniel is seeking damages of 75 million rand, as he believes that 𝗀𝗋𝗋, in his capacity as the political head of the armed forces, police and prisons, ordered his incarceration and refused his request for release on the instructions of 𝗀𝗋𝗋𝗋. Daniel's lawyers have thus far managed to successfully obtain an interim order attaching 2 of 𝗀𝗋𝗋's houses in Cape Town. At present, Daniel can't sleep, concentrate, is anxious most of the time, and suffers bouts of anger, which appear to be symptoms of post-traumatic stress.
Part of what makes a trauma is the memory of the trauma. In other words, that you can't shut the memory off. It is a disorder of haunting.
Dr. 𝗀𝗶𝗃𝗍𝗍 was horrified to hear about Daniel's experiences and believes he would profit greatly from treatment.
One can help people slowly increase their function, return them to a working environment, help them manage their relationships. Sometimes you actually have to bring their families in, their wives in, their children in, help other people know how to behave in relationship to this person so that they also are reconnected with other people.
Earlier this month, Malani and Daniel travelled to Cape Town to celebrate his 50th birthday with their children. At this stage, friends are supporting him financially as he ponders his future and tries to find a job. He says his greatest gift, though, is making up for lost time with his family.
You know, we've suffered greatly as a family, so we've got to spend a lot of time just to get that healing again.